Welcome everyone to another episode of I'm Fine. Today we are honored to have a distinguished guest who has dedicated their career in unwrapping the mystery of their mind and promoting emotional well-being. Please join me with extending a warm welcome to insightful and compassionate psychologist Mili M. Thank you for coming. We are
Thank
thrilled
you.
to have you here, and I'm eager to dive into the meaningful conversation we will have.
Okay, yes. And thank you so much for inviting me to talk about one of my favorite topics.
We are also very eager to know more about this. So, my first question was, can you explain what is postpartum depression? Because, like in layman language, because I myself am just studying psychology and I have mostly no idea about it.
Okay, all right. So, people generally consider postpartum depression as mental health problems after birth, post birth. Okay.
Mm,
So I started working as a postpartum counselor in 2018 post my second birth. So I had a lot of issues, like I had difficult pregnancies and birth. And I was also very curious regarding the birth and the impact of the birth, emotional impact of the birth. And I started working to help other mothers. And when I started working, I realized that when we are dealing with postpartum depression, we are not exploring one major thing that has an impact on the postpartum mental health, and that is birth trauma. And
mm,
that is where I also got a lot of information that I didn't get from the textbooks. Okay, so birth
mm,
trauma is basically any form of distress a woman experience during the childbirth and after the childbirth. Okay, so
mm,
generally, when women have postpartum mental health issues and when they go for interventions, when they go for help, this is rarely explored. Nobody asked about their birth story. Nobody asked what distress the woman had to go through during the birth and after the birth. So I feel that postpartum mental health issues are quite simplified into just understanding postpartum depression, which can be handled with talk therapy and medicine, but it's actually more complex than that. So, were you aware about birth trauma?
I was not. Uh,
Yeah, it's actually quite so it was quite surprising for me as well. Then I started communicating with a lot of mothers, and
mm,
they started coming up with a lot of stories they haven't told anyone yet. And you know why? Because when they start talking about the birth,
mm,
all the other women will say, "Oh, I suffered enough too." So it's kind of
mm.
normalize what they went through in the birthing room. So, because of that, not many share the stories and they don't understand the impact of the birthing process on the mental health of a mother.
I'm not really educated about it, but I also have seen that, when even though when the birthing person talks about their story, other people that do not acknowledge it very well. Like they mostly
Right,
be like, no, it's normal, and they say things like
right,
that.
right. Because the trauma around birth is quite normalized.
Mm,
Nobody talks about an easy birth. Nobody talks about a peaceful birth. Even in the movies, the birth is quite, picturized as
mm,
something traumatic, right?
yes.
Everybody has to avoid it at all costs. Yeah. So, when we talk about the mental health issues related to birth, like postpartum mental health and all, so there is this biology that is involved that we cannot ignore, because definitely there are a lot of hormonal fluctuations that happen during the pregnancy and post birth. That is, the estrogen and the progesterone level, they just go really low right after the birth. And that is why most of the mothers,
Mm,
they feel a really low mood in the in the first few days after birth. Okay. And also the impact of the pregnancy. How easy was the pregnancy? Were there any restrictions? Were there any health issues? They will also be having an impact on the mental health of the mother post birth. And the relationship with partner. how much engaged and involved the partner was, this will have an impact. And the family, immediate family, like if the mother is having issues with in-laws and her own
Mm,
parents, this is also going to have an impact on her mental health. And definitely the birthing process. How was the birthing process like?
mm,
Were there a lot of interventions involved in the birthing process? And studies show that mothers who had C-section are quite susceptible to postpartum depression, mainly because mothers who had C-section was immediately separated from the infant post-birth,
mm,
and which has a huge impact on the breastfeeding relationship as well. Okay. And the treatment of the care provider. How was the hospital? How was the doctor? How was the people around her treating her? All these will have an impact on the mental health. And separation, yeah, like I told,
mm,
separation from the baby. Because right in the hospital, when a baby is born, the first thing they do is weigh the baby and get the Apgar score. But what the baby needs is that the baby has come out of the, body of the mother that
mm,
has been taking care of the child for 9 months. And what the baby needs then is the mother, that is skin to skin with the mother. Some care providers do that, but this is mostly ignored. They actually rush the
mm,
baby to the pediatrician who is ready to get the Apgar score. And this can be, we can look at it as something very small, but it has a significant impact on the mother as well as the child, because it's actually kind of a forced separation, if you see.
mm,
Okay, so these are the small, small things that can have an impact, but not everybody. Some mothers can actually have a huge impact by these small, small things. And the postpartum support also, because after the mother comes with a baby, how much support, emotional and physical support, is given to the mother, how much rest or sleep the mother is getting, how much assistance is given for the breastfeeding, everything has a huge impact on the mental health of a mother. So simply just putting it under the postpartum depression is going to simplify all of these, right?
mm.
Yeah.
I've also seen that, after the after the mother comes home after the birthing process, a lot of even the in-laws and like the husband, they don't really understand it, and they think that after the birth, the birthing person will be normal and will do all the household. So, what do you
Mhm.
think about this? Like,
Okay.
how should we educate them?
Okay. Again, yes, definitely. But if you actually look, to 1 or 2 generations back, birthing
Mm,
process was handled very differently. Now the women also need to get back, to the usual life at the earliest, probably because there is less support system for many. And also the psychological side or the mental side is mostly neglected. Like most
mm,
people are only worried whether the mother is breastfeeding the child enough. Nobody considers the mother as an individual, something that comes attached to the baby. And also the relationship with the partner matters a lot, because there are a lot of differences when it comes to generations looking at the birth and post birth practices. So there is going to be a lot of differences in opinion in that. So if the mother and the father, they form a team, and if they are being really assertive by prioritizing mother's health, a lot of changes can happen. But the problem here is, in most cases, the father is kind of isolated right
mm,
from the pregnancy. Like in many hospitals still these days, fathers are not allowed inside the room where they scan. The fathers has to sit outside and only the mother is permitted inside. So somewhere the fathers are not involved
mm,
as much as the mother is, because mother does the major work, but still there is this passive kind of role when it comes to pregnancy and the birthing process from the father. So I feel this is the major change we have to see. And also, in many places, fathers are not permitted inside the room of the mother and the child post birth. Like that, it's a very
mm,
old practice where the fathers can visit but not stay with the mother, and also this is going to have a huge impact on the relationship between the couple, right?
Mm.
So again, this is going to impact the mental health of the mother as well. So when other people are involved, it's really important that the mother and the father form a team together and be assertive by prioritizing their needs.
Thank you so much for answering. One more thing I wanted to ask you that do you think if we educate women about postpartum depression, it would help them to be cautious, accepting, and more understanding about the situation?
Okay. See, educating more about postpartum, I would suggest what is more important than that is
Mm.
understanding one's body, what happens during the pregnancy and the birthing process, and also empowering the support system is what matters. Because what we need are women not having postpartum issues or depression. So, in that way, we need to focus more on the childbirth education. How much informed the mother is, how much prepared the mother is for the birth, how much planned is the pregnancy, how much in the same page are the couple for having this child, how much prepared the father is to involve in the pregnancy and the birth. These are the things that have an impact on the mental health. So without changing all these things, if we are giving information regarding postpartum depression, I don't think that's going to help the mother. Ultimately, the mother has to deal with all the things. There are so many things that we can control, and there are so many things that we cannot control. Like when it comes to biology and what happens in her body, that's not something she can control. But with the right amount of information, she can actually choose certain things by prioritizing herself and thereby reducing the risk of postpartum mental health issues, right?
Uh, so one more thing I wanted to ask was, what role does societal stigma plays in hindering women from seeking help? Because mostly we see that when after the birth that sometimes sometimes women don't get the help they need at that time. So what the
Mm-hmm.
stigma plays a role in this? How does?
Okay. I think in the previous generation, they just deny that there is a psychological impact of pregnancy and birth because they might have gone through the same thing. They might not have got any support. So for them, it's a very difficult thing to acknowledge. But when it comes to the current generation dealing with birth and pregnancy, I feel that a lot of them uh, validate their post birth mental health issues only if they consider it as a postpartum depression. So you don't need to have postpartum mental health issues to get the care you deserve. Everybody deserves the care. So I feel we need to have a change right from where it all starts, right from planning for a baby,
Mm.
by prioritizing the mother, the prioritizing the health, the sleep, the nutrition, everything of the mother. And there is a whole systemic change that we need to bring in. So if we cannot change the entire system, at least we can bring changes to the decisions I make. For example, if I'm not informed, I will make certain decisions. If I'm informed, I will make different decisions, right? So that is how we are going to bring a very, what do you say, change or a wave in the system.
So I one more question I wanted to ask is, how can we differentiate? Is there any difference between postpartum depression and what we call baby blues in pregnancy? So is there a
Right.
difference?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Baby blues
Mm.
are something that almost all mothers go through because when the mother is birthing, oxytocin is really high to initiate breastfeeding and also to instantly bond with the baby. So at that time, the mothers report a high immediately after birth. But once the baby is out, the body doesn't need to nurture another life in the body, right? So
Mm.
whatever hormones were supporting the baby inside the body will all go down immediately after birth. Okay, so that is the kind of low mood mothers experience immediately after the birth, which would last for almost 2 weeks. So at that time, there will be a lot of crying bouts because it's a huge change. The sleep is affected. The mom is not able to eat well, and if there is C-section, there are other different difficulties to deal with. So, but if the issues persist, like if there are so many triggers that is happening around her, and if they are persisting, there is a high chance that this low mood will continue for a longer period of time. And that is where we will look into whether the mother is able to bond with the child, meaningfully bond with the child. And if it is not, that is a huge concern. And that is where we actually uh, give interventions for postpartum depression.
Thank you so much for answering. Um, One more question I wanted to ask was, um, how can the partner help in this? How, like, you already talked about that part. Even the husband has a passive role to play in pregnancy. So after pregnancy, how does the partner should help?
First thing first, the partner also needs to get informed what happens
Mm.
in their partner's body during pregnancy and birth. So that is by actively getting involved with understanding, preparing for birth, and also preparing for post birth. Like, what is my role here? How can I make things easier? So most men don't have good role models when it comes to that, because their fathers were also quite passive. But this is where they can actually bring a change. That's why I told that, you know, it needs to be a team where the mother and father, they are together and prioritizing the needs and prioritizing what is to be done. So there is, I feel the fathers can do a huge role in supporting the mother. And we have actually seen where when where there is an active supporting role from the father, and the mother has better mental health consequences post birth.
Could you, if you are comfortable, can you share some stories that you have seen of women overcoming postpartum depression?
Success stories, there are a lot of women um having postpartum mental health issues. I wouldn't say that all of them had postpartum depression. A lot of them had birth trauma, which we could identify. And it all comes down to coming back to the body. Like popular to the sorry contrary to the popular belief, it's not always the cognitive interventions that help with postpartum depression or birth trauma. It's the somatic interventions that help the mother, because during the birthing process, if they had any kind of trauma, then they have a tendency to disconnect from their body. They get so disconnected from their body, which makes their symptoms worse. So what we help is to help them get back into their body, connect with their body. That is where the magic works, because they need to actually come back and understand their
Mm.
body to heal better.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming today and asking my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.